Welcome to Lord's Day 24 of the Heidelberg Catechism. Whenever I'm in the building at church, I play a game. Now, you don't have to go tell my boss, I'm really not wasting any time. But in the gathering place near the guest services desk, there's this trash can. You know, the ones that have this opening that's about this big? Whenever I'm near that trash can and I've got a wadded up piece of paper or wadded up paper towel in my hand, I shoot a basket from about 6 to 10 feet. On any given day, if I'm about 50% accurate, I'm pretty happy. However, recently, actually for the past 5.5 days as of the writing of this devotion, I had been perfect. About 2 hours ago, I missed for the first time in those 5.5 days. 5.5 days, now up in smoke. My perfect streak gone. I have to start over again. I'm losing that 5.5 day in my streak. Get the point? You're probably thinking, who the heck cares, Doug? Well, I do. I care because I like to be perfect. But here's the thing. I'm not perfect. Actually, truth be told, I should be ecstatic with going 5.5 days without a miss at the trash can. But the miss is painful. Here's the good news. The very next shot after I made the miss, I made that shot. I have started over again. So now I'm working on a new stretch of being perfect. But one day, maybe even later today, I'll miss again. It's impossible to be perfect in shooting paper at a basket or anything else, including life. So I will have to start over once again in a lot of things. And yet, in Matthew 5, verse 48, Jesus says, "But you are to be perfect, as your Father in heaven is perfect." Listen to the questions and answers for this week from the Heidelberg Catechism. Question number 62 is this: why can't the good we do make us right with God, or at least help make us right with Him? The answer is because the righteousness which can pass God's scrutiny must be entirely perfect and must in every way measure up to the divine law. Even the very best we do in this life is imperfect and stained with sin. After hearing this question and answer, I'm wondering, what in the world could Jesus mean by being perfect then, if it actually is impossible to be perfect? Jesus' admonition to be perfect comes in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount, which is Matthew 5, chapter 5, verses all the way up to chapter 7. In this sermon, Jesus tells us what it's like to be in the kingdom of God. Right before Matthew 48, where he tells us to be perfect, 6 times, if I counted right, Jesus said, "You have heard," and then he follows that up with, "But I say." Following "you have heard," Jesus is basically telling those that were there and telling us today about the way we have implemented the law. He tells them the following rules from the law. He says, don't murder, don't commit adultery. A man can divorce his wife by merely giving her a written notice of divorce. You must not break your vows. An eye for an eye. Love your neighbor and hate your enemy. That's the way it used to be. That's the way the law was really implemented. Then after these rules, showing the way we have implemented God's law, Jesus says, "But I say." With the statements that follow, he's not contradicting the law that had been given to the Jews. What he's doing is letting them know, and letting us know, what the law really meant, the spirit of the law, if you will. In other words, the law as God intended it, the law as God would keep it perfectly. Jesus says, you've heard it said, don't murder. But I say, instead, don't be angry with anyone. Don't commit adultery. Jesus says, but I say, instead, don't even look at a man or a woman lustfully. Jesus talked about divorce. He said, divorcing except for unfaithfulness causes adultery. Don't break your vows, but Jesus says, but I say, instead, you shouldn't even need to make a vow. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. An eye for an eye. Jesus says, but I say, instead, don't get even at all. If someone slaps your right cheek, offer the other one as well. Love your neighbor, but Jesus says, and your enemy as well. Then after this is when Jesus says, but you are to be perfect even as your Father in heaven is perfect. I don't know about you, but after I hear what God intends the law to really be, I can reaffirm now what I've always known anyway, that I am not perfect and can't be. Question number 63. How can you say that the good we do doesn't earn anything when God promises to reward it in this life and the next? The answer is this reward is not earned. It's a gift of grace. So I think from the Sermon on the Mount and what Jesus tells us we should be like as part of God's kingdom, to be perfect as he says, I can understand that the good I do really is not good at all. Even Jesus said that there's only one that's good, and that's God. So if I'm not good and can't do anything good according to the intent of God's law, I'm not earning anything. I can't earn anything. Anything I get from God has to be from grace, giving me what I don't deserve, a gift. Finally, question 64. But doesn't this teaching make people indifferent and wicked? The answer is no. It's impossible for those grafted into Christ by true faith not to produce fruits of gratitude. If what I get from God is a gift, why should I do or try to do anything good at all? After all, I already have the gift. That's really what this question is driving at. And the answer is that I should want to respond the best that I can because God has done for me all these things. I should respond with good works out of gratitude. The bad news is I won't respond as I should, at least not all the time. But I should strive for that. I should strive to be perfect even if I won't be. But the good news is, even if I miss the trash can, even if I miss the mark, sin in other words, it isn't that I have to start over. I do have to start over. But a better way to think about this is that I get to start over. God gives me an opportunity to start over. And I've started over many, many times. Because even though I'm not perfect, at least in this life, God always is. This ends Lord's Day 24. See you next week for Lord's Day 25.